Chapter 1. Date, February 19, 2005. Place, Joint Force Operations Headquarters Bunker, Saudi Arabia. Time, 1600 hours, local. He heard the door to the operations room close behind him, sensing the encroaching darkness more than seeing it. The air, cooler than the scorching Saudi desert, almost chilled him. The comfort of American air conditioning present even here. "Right this way, sir," the burly Marine guard who had escorted him to the operations room said. Gradually, Stewart's eyes began to focus. This space was an entry vestibule, an additional defense against both unwanted light and intruders, both equally unwelcome in the modern heart of military leadership. So this was where the pivotal decisions were made, where it all happened. This was where the actual button resided, and it was here, in these rooms, that a man held his finger on that very button. Turning the corner of the compact room, the two emerged through a black curtain. Before them stretched a sizable room akin in size to that of a McDonald's restaurant. Registers occupied various positions. In this room, rows of glowing screens were arranged in at least 5 rows. Indeed, a scene reminiscent of everyone in uniform, stationed in front of screens, much like at McDonald's. Well, it was kind of similarity, in some sense. "Can I supersize that cruise missile for you, sir? Would you like fighter escort to accompany those Strike Eagles, ma'am?" Stewart felt a faint grin taking shape as he entertained this analogy, standing in one of the most secretive locations on Earth, a deployed operations room, and drawing parallels to McDonald's. Of course, it wasn't really McDonald's, and these individuals weren't serving up Big Macs to foes. Instead, they were delivering a hefty dose of classic American know-how. Their mission was to bring to the door, or perhaps the window, a substantial amount of firepower. A type of firepower that caused restless nights for third world dictators. The sort of weaponry that could practically knock on the door, ensuring someone was home before they entered and left their signature. This wasn't McDonald's. No, not at all. Stewart observed as the Marine proceeded along the row of computers beside the right-hand wall and then turned slightly to his right again. The Marine briefly looked back, checking if he was still following. Stewart could sense the Marine's displeasure at the growing gap between them. About halfway down the line of computers, the Marine intercepted him. "Sir, I did mention before we entered that I needed you to stay close. The General is awaiting your presence, and he's not particularly fond of waiting." "My apologies, Sergeant. It's been quite some time since I've been inside a place like this. Forgot how bustling it can get. I was reminiscing. How long have you been here?" Stewart inquired. "Yep, since the beginning. 3 months in this damn place, sir. Whatever it is you're here for, I hope it speeds up our departure and gets me home to my family." "My apologies, sir." The Marine's face nearly reddened. "Well, I can't promise anything. Better get to the General. I understand he doesn't like to be kept waiting." "Yes, sir, right away." Stewart followed the man down the row of computers and turned left at the end. Having entered at the side of a sand dune, they were 400 feet below the Saudi desert in the United States main command bunker. The bunker had been built shortly after the Second Gulf War, just in case another scenario like this one decided to play itself out again. Similar scenarios had, in fact, been going on for the last 15 years. A lot of people still blame George Bush the First for not having finished the job the first time around, and George Bush the Second for not finishing the job the second time with the Iranians, the Jordanians, and the Syrians. It couldn't have ended up much worse, but who knows? 20/20 hindsight. Stewart reflected on the fact that history was once again repeating itself, however. Once again, other Arab countries were eyeing Kuwait and even Iraq. The U.S. had decided that this wasn't the best plan that had developed, so, after diplomacy had failed, another predominantly U.S. force had deployed to the region. It hadn't taken as long to get all of the expeditionary force in place this time. The U.S. had learned something from the last couple of times, and some of the intervening actions in the 90s as well. The large Marine wound his way through 2 more McDonald's before finding his way into a room the size of 3 restaurants all linked together. The room was very long, and appeared to be divided into 2 halves. The end in which the Marine had brought Stewart was almost empty. The other end of the room was a dark hive of activity, and had yet more screens buzzing away, banks of what looked like modems at each position, and a bevy of different uniformed personnel running around and at each monitor. At the very far end of the room were 2 large screens. The one on the left was full of numbers and looked like an Excel spreadsheet run amok, and the other had what looked like a radar display on it. The sergeant turned towards him. "This end here, sir, it's the plans department. They don't start work till 1800 today. The other end is where we're going, sir. The General should be waiting for you along with his entire team. Don't know exactly what you're about, but damn, you sure have the interest of the general." Stewart grinned back at the sergeant. "You know, General Sarge, always overreacting." "You know, sir, I could get to like you." The Marine guided Stewart to a halt behind two sizable chairs positioned in front of the screens. The chair on the right was occupied by an officer in a flight suit. While the patches were challenging to decipher, Stewart managed a swift glance at the rank as they drew nearer. Bird Colonel. In the chair on the left, a Navy uniformed figure sat, though Stewart couldn't discern the rank. Leaning over, the Marine gently tapped the Air Force Colonel's shoulder. The Colonel turned slightly, appraising Stewart, while the Marine whispered to him. The hushed conversation lasted but a few moments before the Colonel stood and rounded his chair. As he approached, he extended his hand. "Dr. Stewart, delighted to finally make your acquaintance. I've heard a great deal about you, and I'm certain the General is equally eager to meet you. I'm Mike Richards." Stewart noted the conspicuous absence of rank in his introduction, an attempt to cultivate camaraderie and be seen as part of the team. The Colonel continued. "The General is just wrapping up with a couple of advisors, and he'll be with you shortly. In the meantime, allow me to introduce you to my partner here, Bob Ellington, Duke for short. Duke, meet Paul Stewart." The Navy officer also rose from his seat and shook hands. Paul sensed that everyone present, including the Marine sergeant, seemed to anticipate something of monumental significance to emanate from his mouth. "You know, Colonel, I couldn't help but feel the similarity between your outfit here and McDonald's as we walked through." The Colonel and Navy captain shared sideways glances at each other. "No, that's not what I mean. It's just that, well, the rooms are about the same size, and everyone's in uniform, and everyone seems to be serving something, and, well, yeah, never mind. Brilliant start, Ace." "Well, Doc, can't say we've been compared to McDonald's before. Gotta admit, if that's how you science types work, I am definitely in the right line of work. Don't really follow the comparison. You, Duke?" "No, but maybe you could explain it to me at another time, Doctor, if you'll excuse me." The Navy guy turned abruptly, and Paul Stewart knew that the opening hadn't gone well. Just then, the General showed up. "Gentlemen!" Everyone in the room jumped to their feet, and a whirlwind of gray hair and stars came rushing into the room. Carry on. You the doctor?" was directed at Stewart. "Yes, sir." "Into the next room. Mike, Duke, join us. Have one of your boys monitor the map. Doc, you have 15 minutes of my time, and more importantly, the time of my current ops chiefs from both the Air Force and the Navy. This better be good." Stewart could feel his throat tighten as he turned to follow the General. The two operations officers fell in behind him, kind of like being escorted by the firing squad. The small party moved down to the room and into a smaller office adjoining. The room had glass along the front. 10 chairs sat around a large planning table, and on the rear wall was a map of the Middle East and a sliding whiteboard. The General started the meeting after everyone was seated. "All right, Mike, Duke, I've told you a bit about Dr. Stewart and his team to this point. I know that I let on he was here to join us for a short period of observation. What I didn't tell you was why. Dr. Stewart and his team have been working on a new weapon. The Pentagon has decided they want a trial run in a real war zone, and, well, gentlemen, we happen to be the only game in town at the moment. My instructions are quite clear from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We're to provide Dr. Stewart with everything he needs or requests for the duration of his stay here. Anything unclear so far?" The two colonels looked blankly at the General, stunned. It wasn't every day that the military gave a civilian the run of an operations center of a major conflict. After a pause, "No, sir." The General continued, "We're now going to get a brief from the doctor. I know it won't be much because the system is still part of the black world, but it'll be something. I'm well aware that a rumor is going around with the troops already that something big is going on. I want it stopped. The party line is that Stewart and his team are here to compile statistics about the missions we're flying. I want that passed on at the section heads meeting this afternoon. Doctor, you have the floor."